You can go.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Sean Green. I'm the volunteer manager with Friends of the Wissahickon. And again, thanks for joining us for our, our first virtual Trail Ambassador talk with Jackie Kent. Before we move on with the show, I just want to give you a little info about us as an organization, just in case you are unfamiliar. Friends of the Wissahickon is a nonprofit organization and official partner of Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. We are now 97 years old and still going strong. So what does Friends of the Wissahickon do? Quite a few things. We make Wissahickon Valley Park and the creek cleaner and more accessible. We preserve 1,800 acres of woodlands, meadows, and streams. We care for over 50 miles of scenic trails, dozens of historic landmarks, and unique works of public art. And we also, in everything that we do, we are engaging with individuals of all ages and all backgrounds in Wissahickon Valley Park through volunteering and educational opportunities. And we can't do the work that we do without you. So please come out and help us. If you're interested in getting involved, there's quite a few ways you can do that. Please consider becoming a member or by donating to us. It goes a long way to fulfill our stewardship mission. Or you can also volunteer with us. We have lots of volunteer service days throughout the year, actually throughout the week. We have lots coming up, so you can take part in some of the service days. We have individual cleanup options, and lots more. So learn about Friends of the Wissahickon and all of the ways to get involved with us at FOW.org. So before I introduce our speaker tonight, I just want to let everybody know who's out there in internet land that you can ask questions through the comment box below the video, whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube. And we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can.
And my screen will be shared here in a second.
Okay. Well, while that's sharing, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our very special guest, Jackie Kent. Thank you so much for joining. What's that?
Can you share my screen on your end?
I can't see it. Guess we're having technical difficulties on our first time out. Let's see. I guess we're missing Noah. So, well.
I can start doing a little bit of an introduction while we work it out.
Okay. I see Noah is here, so I think he's all right, so I'm going to get to the intro while we are figuring out the technical difficulty of sharing the screen. So
we'll do it here. We're on our way.
We're on our way. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with some introductions, or just one introduction. I've already introduced myself. So now I get to introduce Jackie Kent, who has been a trail ambassador with us since 2016. She's also a member of the Friends of the Wissahickon Habitat Committee. She works as a director of education and wildlife rehabilitator at the Philadelphia Metro Wildlife Center, which is a wildlife rehabilitation facility located in Norristown, Pennsylvania. Her goal is to inspire a love for the wildlife we see every day in our city. And a little fun fact, her favorite part of the Wissahickon is the Lavender Trail.
We do, I love it.
Always good to know.
Yeah.
It's a great part of the park.
What's your favorite part of the Wissahickon? Mine's the Lavender Trail. Well, I'm really excited to be here.
Crestes Valley is actually my favorite.
Crestes Valley, good.
Partly because it's like a 5-minute walk from where I live, and also because it's, I mean, if you've ever been there, it's beautiful and it's quiet, and yeah, kind of can't beat it.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to be able to share my favorite thing to talk about with whoever's out there watching. I do love answering questions. So if you guys have some questions, there's a little bit of a delay, but I'll pause frequently to see if we have anything of interest, and I'll always answer. If we were doing this in person, that's my favorite thing to do, is engage with you guys about wildlife in our area. So we'll start out, I'll tell you a little bit about our organization and what we do. I'll share some photos, which is my favorite thing to do, is corner people and make them look at my cute photos of animals. We'll talk about some things that you might see in your backyard, some common animal problems, and just some things you might see this spring. So this is called Wild Neighbors because my passion is cultivating like a healthy respect for wildlife. So it's loving, protecting, and peacefully coexisting with wildlife. I feel like that is a very important thing. And I think the more we learn about animals, the more we love them. And we know that we don't save what you don't love. So at the Philadelphia Metro Wildlife Center, we take injured and orphaned wild animals and try to fix them or raise them with the goal of returning them back to their native habitat. That doesn't always happen. Sometimes we do practice humane euthanasia for those things that cannot be fixed and released. So in order for something to be released back into the wild, it has to be able to live a wild life, needing food, water, shelter, space, all those things that you learned when you were in elementary school. So those are our criteria for that kind of thing. Public education like this is a huge part of what we do. And you'd think fixing animals should be the most important thing, but with the phone calls that we answer is public education. Programs like this is public education. You see that we have engage our 60+ volunteers. That's 60+ in number, not just in age. We've got all ages of volunteers, 18 and older. We do street events during normal times and lots of public events, which we hope to get back to do soon in 2021 because we love talking to you guys. We do answer about 10 to 15,000 phone calls every year, but we only take in about 3,000 to 4,000 animals. So if you think about that, the phone calls, that's part of public education. It's vetting every animal that comes in so that it really does need help. And that, so we're saving space for things that need help, and we're not taking things in that are just a nuisance to people or just an inconvenience, but things that really, really do need help. So what is wildlife rehabilitation? We talked about it a little bit already, but we do only take wild animals. So we don't take dogs or cats or domestic versions of the animals that you might see. So no domestic turtles, bunnies, snakes, and so on and so forth. But as I say that, we often get very bizarre cases. Like the Game Commission brought us a monkey one year, and we did house that monkey and then drove it to Florida. So we are committed to saving all kinds of animals when we can. But as our mission is wildlife, and our funding comes for wildlife, and we try to save our funding to do our mission. So no pets or anything like that. I just show this because life of a wildlife volunteer and or worker. This is my trunk. This is my trunk emptied out. This is the kind of things that you would need to be a wildlife rescuer. For your safety, for containing the animal. You see there's tape, knives, a Rubbermaid tub with holes drilled in it. And I did one time take my car in to get inspected. It didn't pass inspection, and I had to actually get a new car. And the dealership gentleman helped me unload my trunk from one old car to a new car. And they saw duct tape, a tarp, knives, safety goggles, gloves, and all that stuff. I'm not a serial killer. I help wild animals. And this is also why I can't put groceries in my trunk. So it's fun. It is a commitment, though. It's a lifestyle choice. I am not the person my husband married. This is what he has now. Another thing about our lives is I think in all professions, communication is key. So here's some things you might see around our facility. Signage is very important. So we were talking about safety before. How do you communicate to your 60+ volunteers if you can't grab them when they come in and make sure that they're handling these animals properly? So you just see some of the humorous signs that I've seen over the years. You know, a seagull, or it's not a seagull, it's a gull, whatever species of gull it is. They could peck your eyes. You wear safety goggles. Sometimes the hawk can open up the cage on its own, or the raccoon, or the opossum. There is almost always an adult squirrel on the loose after the babies are grown. They just get out all the time. They are the hardest animal to deal with, adult healthy squirrels. The one on the far right says this turtle is dead. Don't think that we just kill turtles, but sometimes for whatever reason, something might be waiting, and turtles don't move a whole lot. So there was volunteers feeding a dead turtle for a couple days. Just want to let them know what to do. So I thought that was funny. Also, like when I come in the morning, sometimes you guys might be checking your emails. My boss says, before you start anything, can you get the screech owls off of the microwave? And I was like, yes, aye, Captain, I will do that. That's the kind of thing that I deal with. And that's kind of why I love my job. Those guys just happened to find a way out of a very tiny hole 4 nights in a row, and they loved the microwave. There was actually more behind the microwave in that picture.
You're really selling this profession. This sounds like a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. This is fun. So what kinds of things do we treat? You see in this photo, I love this photo. This is a crow poking out of a box. We do get, we rely on people like you to bring the animals to us. We provide the medical care and the professional knowledge and the housing, but we do need people to bring the animals to us. We're all in this together, right? So we get animals in all kinds of containers. This one just so happens to be that crow peeking out. Like, don't you forget about me. And we don't. But one of the biggest things that we do is make them not stressed when they come in. We give them a couple of minutes to settle down before we give them any kind of treatment. Of course, we look to see if they're in an emergency situation, so excessive bleeding or something that would immediately have them put down, like they are just too far gone. We don't want to have them suffer. But otherwise, they do sit for a minute or two to relax a little bit. So some of the things that we deal with are like window collisions. We get that a lot with birds. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with how big of a deal window collisions are, especially in our city. And there's a lot of things that we're doing to mitigate that, like turning lights out and things like that when birds are migrating. They don't see glass very well, and they think glass is an extension of the sky or additional trees, and they will run into it, and they can really hurt themselves. It causes a lot of bird deaths. This guy is another kind of thing that it's a great blue heron. He was found frozen to a lake. Again, awesome people like you guys. They took some hot water, got him dislodged from the lake very carefully. The business end of that guy is the beak. You can see that our rehabber Michelle is holding that beak. He will peck your eyes out. That's another, we will always be wearing safety goggles. But we got him and we thawed him out a little bit, gave him some food and water, free room and board for a couple of days, and he was on his way. But he could have died being out there stuck in the way that he was. This is a pigeon that we got. You see, the reason why I include this one in here is we do treat pigeons. Some places do not. We love pigeons. And we have an x-ray here, and you see he had surgery with pins in his wing. We did not do that surgery. We rely on a whole team. So we work with veterinarians. This was done with our good friends at Radnor Veterinary. Dr. Donato there, he is great with birds, and they do provide us free or at-cost care. And they do that through a fundraiser that they have, a fund that they have for strays and for wildlife, that they can provide this service for us. Radiographs, surgeries, medicines, and stuff like that are often no cost to us, and we are very appreciative of that kind of thing. We get a lot of like vehicle lawnmower collisions and car accidents. This guy obviously has an abrasion, like a big gash in his neck. They look like rocks. I mean, people don't see them when they're weed whacking, when they are lawn mowing, or when they're on the road. So we do get a lot of shell fractures and things like that. And, you know, a good portion of the time we are able to heal them. It does take a while, but it can be done. This little guy. Now at Philly Metro Wildlife, we don't treat bats. We can take them in, but we do transfer them to Diamond Rock Wildlife Rehab or another bat rehab. Bats do take a lot of effort. So during baby season, they get fed every 2 hours around the clock. And we do need to sleep at night in order to be able to take care of the majority of our animals. So often places that do bats are dedicated to doing bats. So we have Diamond Rock Wildlife and Media who does a lot of bats for us. But we can always answer your questions. So if you find one on the ground and you're concerned about it, that's another reason to give us a call, and we'll always answer your questions. That's just a baby pigeon, and I put that in there because they're one of the cutest things you'll ever see. So other things that we treat, and we'll go over some of these, is diseases, broken bones, forceful removal. So sometimes, you know, when trees are getting cut down and things like that, You will find orphans at that time. Outright cruelty, we do see that, of course. People do bad things to turtles, bad things to all kinds of animals, and we do see cruelty in that way. And habitat destruction kind of goes along with that forceful removal. So recognizing the need for help. So we're going to talk about this for a little bit. Different situations, like should I call the Philly Metro Wildlife Center? The answer is always, because even if it's not a problem, we can just ease your fears. But these are some of the common things that we see. So kind of going clockwise from the upper left, that's a great horned owl. He was caught in a soccer net. So owls are really good at doing owl things. They're excellent hunters. The great horned owl has like a 85% success rate when he's killing, when he's getting some dinner, but they can't see soccer nets. They're not used to that. That's not something that they're trained in their brain to be aware of, and they'll often get caught in it. And then they can break their bones and things like that, just trying to get free. So some actually police officers brought this one. They were able to cut him down. It's not something that we would ask a normal everyday person to try to do. The great horned owl has like 300 pounds of crushing pressure in his talons. They can land you in the hospital. So human safety is always our #1 concern. But they brought him in and he was fine. We did cut him loose. We treated him, made sure he was fine inside, gave him a couple days free room and board. Then we see a goose with something wrapped around a piece of string. We're going to get to that in the next slide though. A raccoon with a can on its head. So we all know the importance of locking up our trash and what happens if they don't. The animals will just get into it. They want the peanut butter that's left over on your recycling and all that just as much as you. They think it's tasty, so they will get caught in it. This happens to us a couple of times a year. We'll get something that's just wandering around with its head caught in whatever, and we can help it. And then there's a little snake caught in some netting. Anything like that that's left outside is a potential entanglement issue for our wildlife friends. So this guy, I don't know, this was maybe 2016, 2017. This guy was right at Valley Green, and we got so many calls about him. I actually, funny story, ripped my pants in the creek trying to catch this goose because his foot was entangled, but his wings were fine, so he could fly. We actually never caught him. So the next picture is not actually his, but this is what can happen. You can see the swelling. They can get secondary infections. It can cut off their circulation, and they can actually end up dying because of an entanglement like that that's not caught. The far right picture is something that they have at the John Heinz National Wildlife Refuge, which I think was done with, Sarah Marley is saying that, yeah, she was there. She's one of the ones that called me about that goose. So these receptacles are for putting your used fishing line in, and you could just throw it away in the trash can, but also animals can get into a trash can, even one that has a lid with an opening, and drag it out with food, scraps, or whatever. These PVC pipe things are very good. They're ugly, but they're a good receptacle for that fishing line. So that's something to consider, and that's why they're there in case you never knew. So hit by car. We see some of the things that are often hit by cars, which would be turtles. We talked about that before because they're often on the road. If you see a turtle trying to cross the road, you can help it across in the way that it was going. Don't put it back where it came from because it's just going to turn around and keep on going the same way. A snapping turtle isn't something I would recommend everybody just go and help across the street. They can reach around about halfway back their shell and bite you pretty hard. But you could drag them onto your car mat or a box or something like that that you may have in your car and help them across the road that way. This hawk was also hit by a car. You think, why is a hawk hit by a car? They're so fast. And we can get to this a little bit later, but this hawk was likely poisoned first by something that he ate. That usually decreases their reflex time and makes them succumb to things they normally wouldn't. So their reaction time is slow, can't get out of the way of the car and so forth. Opossums, we're also going to get to that in a little bit, but another animal that we often see on the side of the road as part of roadkill. Here we go. I love opossums. They're one of my favorite things on the planet. So we do often get opossums either hit by a car or ones that people find dead on the side of the road, unfortunately. But we have great people like you out there who will check the opossum's pouch for babies. And if you didn't know, opossums are only marsupial in the United States. So they're born about the size of a cashew, maybe a little smaller, and then they continue to grow in the mom's pouch. So she could have babies. This one that we took right here was a very sick opossum, but we were able to keep her alive. And, you're saving sometimes 9 to 13 lives if you can just even keep the mom alive until they become viable, that we could help raise them on the outside. So you see them on the right. They're so cute. Opossums are not the best parents, so they do carry them on their back at a certain age, and if one falls off, they just let them go. And in that case, if you see one by itself, it does need help, and you can give us a call and we will help in that case. It's very important that they're not by themselves. And you can tell if they're ready to be on their own if they're about 9 inches, not including their tail from nose to end of their butt. This is a thing that, we just started seeing in the last 5 years as being a really big problem. We all hate lanternfly. They're disgusting. We're trying to, kill their eggs and all that and scrape them off the trees and things like that. But then once they are flying around, people often put this kind of tape around their trees, and it's devastating to wildlife. You might not see it just in your neighborhood, but we do see it in rehab as 7 patients a day on average during peak summertime season. So there's some things that you can do to help with that. You can we call it hardware cloth, which is like a galvanized metal mesh. You can put that around the tape so that things aren't going to get stuck to it, but the bugs that are crawling up the tree will still get stuck to it. We see a lot of the things that end up naturally crawling up the tree in search of insects and food. So like nuthatches and woodpeckers and things, squirrels, bats. But then look, we also have a red-tailed hawk that was caught on one. So, if you don't care about the tiny birds, which you should, like these majestic hawks are also getting caught on this paper. And their feather condition is of utmost importance. So this hawk, he did not hurt himself. He's not injured. He doesn't have a broken wing or anything, but his feathers were so badly damaged that he has to stay in rehab until they grow back, until they either molt out naturally. You can sort of encourage the molt, but it's very painful and we don't want to do that. So he's going to be in captivity until those feathers regrow and he can fly again. And that's stressful for the bird, and they do not like that. Nobody wants that. So that's just another cause for either not using it at all or using it in a responsible way by covering it so that they cannot get in there. And then just glue traps that people put out for rodents also attract a lot of unwanted things. They call it bycatch, but it's real living things that get caught in there.
Jackie.
Yeah.
I have a question. So what are some things you can do to keep wildlife away from your yard or garden, noting that squirrels are especially bad this year?
Yes. So we do get that question a lot. We never encourage people to feed wildlife outside, with the exception of, a responsibly maintained bird feeder. And even if you have one of those, squirrels, they're smarter than they can ever possibly be. They will get into your bird seed. But cleaning up the seed around your feeder, not feeding other animals, even domestic pets outside, or only doing so if for a small period window of time and then taking it back in, securing your trash. Basically, what you don't want is a free source of food for these animals, because you will attract, and we will be talking about this in a little bit as well, because like this disease right here is mange. And look at the next thing. So this is caused by a mite on the skin, a parasite, and it does burrow down into the skin, makes them very, very uncomfortable. Foxes are especially susceptible to it, and we see a lot of this. And that it's very easily transmitted from one to another. So if you are feeding animals and lots of foxes are unnaturally together, you will find more instances of mange. It can clear up on its own, but if you have a weakened immune system at all, it can just be devastating and eventually lead to organ failure. So we are able to treat these foxes. You see him on the left. It was just terrible. He was full of these scabs. He was so lethargic, and he was a resplendent fox by the end. He was a really good success story. So definitely, that was a really good question. You do want to just deny them the easy, free, non-natural food source is one way.
What about keeping them out of your garden that is filled with delicious things?
That is true. I don't know if you've ever followed Chunk the Groundhog on social media. So there's a man who had some issues with a groundhog taking part of his garden, and he decided he would put up a trail cam to see what it was, and he ended up seeing him just blatantly eating all of his food. He planted some extra and always set some out for him. I know I told you not to eat wild food, or feed wild animals, but that was one thing. He just planted extra to know that, you know, rabbits, deer, and things like that will do it. There's a great section of the Humane Society of the United States website that goes species by species on how to humanely keep them out of your yard or home, because each person is different. So if you would ever give us a call, sometimes we can give you advice specific to your setup. So if you have a garden, you can cover your garden. You can put some hardware cloth down pretty far down into the thing at an angle. That can help some groundhogs from digging in. There's just things you can do species specific, but the Humane Society of the United States does have a section of their website. So it's humane exclusion is the thing that you want to Google. And from your house and from your garden, there are always ways to deter them. But also know that nothing is 100% because they also live here and they don't know your property lines. Another reason why we discourage people from feeding animals, if you really love them and you love them in your yard, your neighbor might not. And he might not do humane exclusion. He might do something cruel. So that's one thing to take into consideration, that not everybody is as tolerant as you are. So if you draw them to your yard, somebody else might not want them, and that can lead to things. So this is kind of answering the question here on this slide a little bit. Another thing that we see is poison. This is a bald eagle that we had in December, I want to say. He was not shot. He ate lead shot. You can see the x-ray of his stomach on the right there. It takes only a tiny, tiny bit of the lead shot to take down this bald eagle. He actually didn't make it. And that's so sad. So if you're familiar with eagles at all, even to get that resplendent white head, the feather, he had to be alive for at least 5 years. So this was probably an old, maybe even a female, I think. I don't remember what they said it was, but that is just really important that we hunt responsibly, encourage that to clean up gut piles. Use alternative shot if you can, if it's affordable, and let's work to make it affordable to use like copper shot and things like that, because it takes down not only eagles, but other animals too. And we're really anti-rodenticide, because I know that mice and rats are pests for people, and we do not want them in our house. That's a human health issue. But we can also encourage things like owls to do that naturally outside. And not using rodenticides, because some of them do not kill the animal right away. They go out into the environment, and then they are killing the animals that would eat them. So some of the mammals that eat small rodents, and definitely raptors. We all, maybe, I don't know how you feel about mice and rats. I happen to love them. I have pet rats. I love taking and rehabbing field mice. It's one of my specialties. But I also, I mean, most people can love an owl and love a hawk because they're just so majestic. And we do see them come in, they bleed internally, they just succumb to the poison. It's very hard to treat it unless we know exactly what they ate and when they ate it. We can try, but it doesn't always work. And it is sad to see. So it isn't something that the normal person who puts that trap out with the rodenticide will see. You're not going to see the effects. And I do see them. So I do want to encourage people to try to use alternatives to that when possible. I just put this one in here because it's cool. We got the snowy owl in. You know that we don't see that many of them. We do see them in January and February for some reason out by the airport where a lot of the birders always go every year. This one was found in, I forget which prison, but he was tangled up in the barbed wire and ended up breaking its wing trying to get free. Again, we went to Dr. Donato and he pinned this wing, and then he was with us for a couple of months. And then, you know, we had this lovely snowy weather and perfect for a snowy owl release. It was really neat. One of the great things about my job is that I do get to see animals up close and personal and see them in a way that the average person does not. really get to go up and touch a snowy owl or feed it. And we are very careful. We don't get up in the face of any of our animals. We don't talk to them. We don't talk about how cute they are. We take some pictures here for obviously education purposes and to just document the things that we do, but we're not sitting there and bugging it all the time, even though it's cool. Babies. This is my favorite part. I love babies, and it's starting. They're here already. We start to get our first baby mammals in usually March. It's a little bit later this year because I think of all the snowy weather that we had, but we now have, the squirrels are here. A huge portion of our intakes are babies. So squirrels, opossums, and all baby mammals, but we'll talk about the different kinds here. So we have special case orphans. I told you before that we take 10,000 phone calls, but only take about 3,000 animals. This is very important. And anytime we get a phone call about these guys, it might be annoying to the finder, but we will thoroughly vet all of these guys, all of these species that could possibly carry, we call them rabies vector species. So you got the skunk, the fox, the groundhog, or woodchuck, raccoon, but also bats and coyotes. We are very careful when we take these in. We try to reunite them with the parents. Oftentimes people just see them alone for like half an hour and think that they're abandoned, but we really want to make sure that they're true orphans and that nothing is coming back to help them. Some species, the mother and the father both feed them after they're weaned, so the chances of both the mother and the father being deceased are very low, and we just don't want to have these guys in our center if we don't need to. They are super cute, but they are there usually for 6 months, and every day that's a lot of money, a lot of food, and a lot of space that can be used for something that really, really does need our help. So forgive us if we do ask you a lot of questions if you call about one of these guys. And these are babies that are often left alone. We sometimes joke that we should just say, like, Philadelphia Metro Wildlife Center, put the bunny back, because these guys are often left by themselves. Both deer and rabbits really get fed in the morning and at night by their moms and are otherwise left alone during the very early weeks of their lives. Days in the case of bunnies, because they grow so fast. And there's some reasons for that. One of them is they naturally don't have a scent when they're just born, but the parents do. And how do predators find those animals? By their smell. So not being around them is a good survival tactic. They just fill up their bellies and then come back to them later at night. Also, deer like to have their babies really out in the open, maybe just right under your window, in your garden, on your tan bark. I don't know why they do it, but they did it there on purpose, and it's fine. And there are some times when they do actually need help. If somebody has run over a bunny nest with their lawnmower, you can check it. If there's any sign of blood or anything, we would like to see all those bunnies in our center, just because that can attract pests like flies and be detrimental for their health. If you've touched a bunny nest by accident, that doesn't mean the mom won't come back. That's a myth. You don't want to move them though, because she can't smell. She's only going back for where she knows she put them. And they do move on pretty quickly for bunnies. They do grow rather fast. And the common orphans, like I said, the squirrels, it's just squirrels for days. We love them. Love them until they get to be big, and then they run over the center because the volunteers let them out all the time. I let them out all the time. They're impossible to keep contained. But there are a lot of interesting things about squirrels, namely that the mom usually has 2 nests. So even if you see one that has fallen out or a nest was destroyed in, say, a storm, she can, if she's healthy and they're healthy, take them to her second nest. She can't carry 6 at one time. She carries them 1 at a time, and she won't do it if you're out there or your dog is out there. So sometimes we do ask people to give it some time, maybe warm up the babies a little bit for her, and then she'll take them as long as they're not injured. So we do ask you a lot of questions, and we might ask you to give it an hour or 2 of your time. And I think that's not much to ask. I know we're all busy, but that mom will be in distress if she can't find her babies. And then of course, baby bird season is my favorite. I get excited every time I see a baby robin, and I feed them once every half an hour for an 8, 9, or 10-hour day. And every half hour, I open the lid of the box they keep them in, and I'm just delighted. They're so fun. Baby birds, like everyone knows that baby birds then grow up and they fledge and they're out of the nest, and most species learn to fly from the ground up, not from the nest down. So the fact that they're on the ground is a natural part of their natural history and their life cycle. So we always like to have you on the phone, maybe get a picture to make sure that they are at the stage where they probably should be left alone. Most of the time they are, but we can, like I said, we will answer any question that people have. We do a lot of baby birds every year. These guys are a special case. So these are waterfowl. I have a honk if you love geese bumper sticker. So if you ever see one of those, it's me or some of our volunteers also have them. I love them that much. I think they're one of the best animals ever. The interesting thing about geese is that if you do see a gosling on its own, it does need help. They do need their parents help keep them waterproof and warm. And if there's no parent in sight, that baby definitely needs help. Interesting thing about geese, though, is that we all know that the best thing to raise an animal is the same species. So we don't want our human faces in the baby's faces. We try to use surrogates when we can. The same species raises the babies for us. We do that with owls. We do that with vultures and some other things. So geese are really cool because you can take babies of the similar size, find another family, and just give them a couple more babies. It's pretty neat. They'll take care of them. They're not good at counting, just like opossums, but this time they're very caring, though. They will just adopt extra babies. Mallard ducks, which are in the middle, won't do that. They just won't. They're like, I have enough babies. No, thank you. And so we do have to raise those in our center when we get them. And they grow really quickly to full size. So rehoming is also something that we do. We see, like, you've got the crow here. He is very large, the size of an adult crow. You can tell he's a baby because he's got the pink in his mouth and his gape. Crows are so social that they don't have babies the first year after they're born. They still hang around with their families for 3 to 4 years, and it's very important for them. So what we'll try to do is if one falls out of the nest and maybe gets a scratch on it or something that we can fix pretty fast, we will try to take it back to its family if we can. Rather than raising it and letting it go when we think it's good, we will try to put it back. That's very important. Same thing with some grounded great horned owl babies, which you see on the far right. And then you see in the middle, the man that helped us get them back up into the tree. We use a lot of people care about animals, and people with very specific skills help us. This guy was a tree worker, and he used his, whatever that is, pulley system to get up really high in the tree and return those babies. And the people on that property reported that they never had another issue, and they just grew up like regular owls. So we do really appreciate that. That could have been a very difficult animal to raise, but that guy helped us out. Another thing, so when we get people, if someone calls us in October and says there's a baby great horned owl on the ground and it needs help, I'm thinking to myself, there's no baby great horned owls. I think that was probably an adult screech owl. So what you see on the left is a full-grown screech owl. That's a garden glove for scale that he has in his talons. And on the right is an actual baby. That is a baby great horned owl. And the adult is on the far right. The baby is bigger than the adult. The only reason why you can tell it's a baby is the plumage, because it's fluffier. So that is a female on the left and a male on the right. The male on the right raises babies for us. He is our surrogate. So as soon as we get babies in, we get anywhere from 1 to 5 a year. He does that for us. And that's very important that big raptors like that don't get imprinted and don't associate humans with food. We'll do all sorts of things like using face masks, even pre-COVID, masks on ourselves, puppets to feed the animals. We don't want them to see a human face and think that we're its mother. They do develop their sense of owlness, and we don't want during that period to have our faces anywhere near them. And our owl does a great job just for us. It's free babysitting, basically. We love it. Oh, this little guy, this is not falling into any one of the categories, but it's just one of those things that ends up happening. Like, If you've seen that scene in the Christmas Story where the little kid gets his tongue stuck to the pole in the wintertime, this poor raccoon got all 4 of his feet stuck to metal, and it just took off a layer of skin. He had like what you call maybe like an ice burn maybe on all of his legs. And that poor raccoon. And they are so smart and so dexterous with their hands that this was just so hard for him to eat and do things. But he healed rather quickly and got out of there. But that's just one of the weird things that we got in, and I like to share with you guys. So this is one of the things just to put in here, that if you do need to safely contain an animal, we call it the box over method. Like you would get a spider out of your house with a glass and a piece of paper. So what you would do is put a box over the animal that you're trying to help, slide something bigger than the opening of the box under it, and then tape it up. That's how we're going to tell you to bring in everything. Even before COVID, when, you know, we don't want your cat carriers and stuff like that, because like I said before in one of the first slides, we like to give it a couple minutes when they come in without touching them. So if we have to grab them out of a cat carrier so that we can clean it and give it back to you, we're moving that animal. Maybe we're moving a fracture we don't want to move, we want to touch it the least amount possible and give it a little bit of rest before we have to do much to it. But they can breathe through this cardboard, and it makes the perfect container. And we all have a lot of boxes lying around because we're getting everything through the mail right now. So it's actually pretty good for us. People never say, I don't have a box. Everyone has too many boxes. Oh, another cool thing that we did, remember when I showed you the picture of the red-tailed hawk that had like all the sticky paper on it? This isn't from that guy, but if we do have a hawk with severe feather damage that we don't want to keep it for 6 months until it would molt again, we can do something called feather imping. So what we do is we take a dead hawk, we do save them for that purpose. We save various animals like that turtle in that one slide that was dead. We do save them for feathers and things like that. So what we did is we took feathers from a hawk, and you can't see in that middle picture, but it's all labeled from like left to right, what kind of feathers they are, from the tail and from the wing, left and right wing. And what we did, he was missing some feathers in his tail and missing 13 total, which is a significant amount of feathers. And we took them and cut the old feathers, and then very high tech with toothpicks and glue, put new feathers in. And that seems like that wouldn't work, but it does. And that hawk did not have to spend 6 months with us. It flew off about a week after we did this. We obviously test fly him. It has to be perfect, perfectly aligned, because it's kind of like a rudder. Their tails help steer them. You can't have one sticking out in a weird way. It took about 4 of us to do this. The bird was under anesthesia. And I think it's a really beautiful thing, because there was that one hawk that didn't make it, but really he's getting a chance to fly again. There was 2 hawks flying when we let the patient go. And I think it's an amazing thing. And I'm glad to be part of a team that is able to put in all of the work and, I don't know, technical skills that it takes and patience to do this. I was just a helper. I am not qualified to do this level of work. That was my boss, Rick. And then release. This is my favorite part. We always try to get volunteers to do this for us, because it is just such a rewarding thing. Oh, the one on the left, that is a screech owl that we filmed his release, of course, in front of the beautiful forest at Pennypack Trust. And he flew backwards into a truck well instead, because, of course, that's what you want to do when you're on camera. So that's wildlife rehab. It never goes the way you think it's going to be. And animals don't cooperate. They don't care if it's a good PR moment for you. It's never going to work. Then we got the squirrel. We were so glad to see them go, because they love just go be crazy outside. And of course, the snapping turtle. This was the one that me and a volunteer, Jessica, hi Jessica, if we're on there, we released him, and just, you can tell like the turtle level of joy, releasing turtles into the water, also releasing waterfowl into the water. They just immediately take to it. When they say like a duck to water, it's true. It is pure animal joy. Oh, and that's just that's a hawk. Sometimes they run out instead of fly. And they've got those pants, and I just love it, because, like, you know, when you see them lift up, their legs are covered in feathers, and it does look like pants. I love a good hawk pants photo. There's just a couple of slides here just about everything, reiterating what I said about humans and wildlife. I didn't get here by not touching and messing with some wildlife when I was a little kid. But as we want to encourage responsible interactions with nature. So, you can have your kid out to Valley Green and see the animals and see the geese without feeding them white bread, which does make them sick. And can cause a whole host of problems. You can have them enjoy and responsibly pick up, that little salamander and explore and see the slugs and the worms and things like that, because that's how we cultivate that love. And everyone that's doing what I do, and even probably all of you guys, have fond memories of that. So with our own kids, we want to make sure that we're just doing that responsibly. And you won't save what you don't love. So encourage the love. Yeah, so all these things here. And then I'm going to try to stop sharing my screen to maybe be a little bit larger, because I did bring a friend with me. And we'll see if he'll perform for us. I'm going to see if I can get my daughter to come out so he'll talk. I'm going to bring one of our animal ambassadors. So one of the things that we do, you saw in the beginning slide, is we do bring some animals out to schools, to different community events. So this is Russell. He's our crow. He usually talks when he sees some faces. So I'm trying to bring out to see if my family will make him talk. We'll see. Can you say, hi, guys? Anyway, we'll see. Like, my husband will stand here and stare at him, and we'll see if he'll talk. But the thing that's great about Russell is we bring him out because he was raised by people as a baby. So he's a cautionary tale, if you will. What they did was they took him in, and they thought they were doing a good thing. They found an abandoned baby crow, and they fed him. And we had that conversation about not associating people with food, so that they don't think that they're humans. Russell is not quite fully imprinted, but he does not, he's not afraid of people at all. And he is afraid of other crows. That's very bad for him in the wild. He was actually landing on people at Valley Green Inn. So if a crow landed on me while I was eating at Valley Green Inn outside, make my day. But that's not the case for most people. So he was causing some havoc, and we did know that that was wrong. So he is with us, and he will be with us for a very long time. He's been with us for 10 years. He's 10 years old. And he could live to be about 15 or 20 years old. So that's not an easy decision that we make when we keep these guys. What are you doing? Do you want some water? No? But we do keep him, and he is super, super smart. So if you know anything about crows, they can recognize faces. So one of the things you don't want to do is ever be mean to a crow, right? They've done studies where people have been carrying like a dead crow across a campus, wearing a mask, like a Halloween mask that maybe didn't look like not a monster, but a person. And then they would come back the next day without the dead crow, but with the same mask on. And then they would still sound warning calls and things like that. So they recognized the faces, and they repeated the same study. The crows would see the mask and do the warning calls, and there'd be more crows, and at greater frequency in time, in length of time. So a month, a year goes by, and they still recognize faces. There's some pretty cool documentaries that you can watch on these guys. They can solve puzzles about the same level as like a 7-year-old kid. The New Caledonian crows, and I think New Zealand area, they are using tools to solve puzzles, which is something that initially we only thought apes did, but these birds are so smart. And I told you that he can talk. He's just not going to do it today because he doesn't see any new faces. But even Sean on there, he's not.
Russell, can you see me?
Can you say hi, Sean?
I'm embarrassed to say it took me a couple minutes to get the joke why his name is Russell.
Right. We do at our center. We do have Russell Crowe. We also have Kevin Bacon, the turtle. If you ever see any of our live programs, we don't have the most up-to-date references. We've got a Keith Richards, a Kevin Bacon. Yeah, we don't have any current things. So this is Russell. I don't think I said that before, but it's Russell Crowe. Barking like a dog. So So you get to see him bark like a dog because he saw my cat. So all corvids are mimics. And that includes like jays, ravens. That's the ones that you're going to see around this area. And they do that for a whole host of reasons. Russell does mimic human speech because he's around humans. We don't know why he chooses to say what he says. He can laugh. He can say, good boy. He can say, hi, guys. He's not going to do it today. You'll just have to come and see me live sometime. Because I usually can't even get an word in edgewise about crows because he talks over me the whole time. But they do this. They can mimic car alarms. Russell can also mimic a Canada goose exactly. And he does that for no other reason I can imagine than to just mess with the goose. He's got no benefit to do it, but they're just kind of mischievous. You hear about him a lot in mythology and things like that. We do love him, but he is work. It's like having a child. So they're not pets. I know I make it look so cool to have a crow talk to me, and they are a lot of fun. And I have to say it is one of the best parts of my job, but he does require a lot of attention and a lot of food. He eats everything. They're supreme generalists. So in the wild, they'll eat anything from carrion, so dead stuff, fruits, vegetables, all kinds of meat, eggs, other small animals, small amphibians, things like that. Pretty much anything. His favorite foods are mealworms, corn, grapes, pine nuts, that kind of thing. And their natural diet is really high in fats too. So they eat things like pine nuts, and it just really supports brain growth and how smart they are in the wild. He is, like I said, just a joy to have, but it would be better if he was flying free in the wild. So we do encourage people, always give us a call. Don't try to raise babies at your house. And I know that it does seem so cool, and it seems like a fun project for a couple of days, but they do get bigger, older, and often require a very specific diet in those first couple of weeks. And we do get people who did try to raise things at home and were very well-meaning, but fed them an improper diet, and it ends up being devastating for that animal. And that person, the finder, doesn't see it. We see it when we have to put it down because of that decision, or that it does pass away because its organs aren't working properly and it didn't grow properly. So as fun as it is, try to come and volunteer if it's something that you really want to do at a wildlife rehab. Then you can feed babies in the healthy and correct way instead of trying to do it at home.
That's actually a question that was asked. How can people volunteer with Philadelphia Metro Wildlife Center?
Sure, you can go to our website. We do have a volunteer section. We do take them on a rolling basis because we do get busy and we can't train people. But you can fill it out and give us your information. And if you're a good fit, we'll get back to you. It is work. It is. We do expect people to treat it like a job that you would go to, a shift a week, and at the same time every week, and that you make 70% of your shifts, because it's so important. We could not do it without our wonderful volunteers showing up all the time, because there's only 3 rehabbers, and we have to be doing the animals that come in, and we're giving the medicines and doing all that kind of stuff, and like the baby feeding and the cleaning up. It's a lot of cleaning up poop. It's not all fun, but you do get to see a lot of stuff that you wouldn't normally get to see.
Jessica says, yes, so much poop.
Oh, yeah, that should be one of our volunteers.
I do have a couple other questions, actually. Somebody had asked, what should you do with like an older deer that's injured on your property?
That's a great question. We get calls like that all the time. And one of the hardest things I ever had to learn was that we cannot do anything about adult deer. Very few places can. And that's for a number of reasons. One is adult deer are, even at their weakest state, very dangerous to transport. They are extremely powerful. They look so thin and they're like bounding. They look like they're light. They are heavy. They can really harm a person. Even if they are knocked out, they come to in your car and they're not properly restrained. It's just, so it's a danger to humans. They also suffer from capture myopathy. We could have a football field sized enclosure for them, and that could still stress them out to the point that they would just die in captivity. So we just simply do not have the caging resources. And also there's some issues of traveling over county lines with some diseases that deer have that we want to manage. So we always say that if you do have a deer on your property that's injured, it could be stuck in something, or maybe causing some accidents in the street because it's, injured. You could always call your local non-emergency police department and see if they have an animal control section that can help, or the local game commission. For us, it would be the Reading Regional Office. You can see now they have a lot of things to do. There's about 2 officers per county. They might not be able to help you super fast, but you can at least make them aware. And if it's a big issue, they can do it. And unfortunately, there's just not much we can do.
And that's also who you would want to reach out to if you encounter an animal that you suspect may have rabies.
You can do that. You can call. In Philadelphia, we've got animal control, which is a municipal service that's free for us. If you're tuning in from any of the suburbs, you can call and see if you have an animal control there. Otherwise, just use your judgment and stay away. And if something's like in a, it's like a rabid raccoon is in a playground or something like that, like I'm sure the local police would help to that. But like, try to see if there's an animal control section, usually an officer.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And you would always recommend calling before trying to assist an injured animal?
Yeah. Yes, of course. We take phone calls. We're open every day, 365 days a year for your phone calls. And if you don't get through right away, keep trying, because it is soon being like it's like a call center, one call after another. But we do really value your phone calls, and not to email us with animal questions. You can email me at Jackie@Philadelphia Wildlife with just general animal questions, but not emergent animal care questions, because we don't monitor that, because we're not on our email, not on our phones checking our email during the day. We're very busy, pretty much April to October, but we will answer the phone and we'll try to give you the best advice unique to your situation.
Okay. And I had one final question for you. You had mentioned that somebody brought in a monkey. Was that somebody's pet? What's the story there?
So I forget the monkey's name, and some of the volunteers that are watching are going to be mad at me, but I think it was a marmoset, and we gave it some kind of ridiculous name. It was confiscated by the game commission. They brought it to us because we knew we could house it and give it the proper diet until we could figure out something to do with it. We found a refuge in Florida that would take it. We had a volunteer who volunteered to pay for it. She drove it down there, stayed at a hotel, a monkey-friendly hotel. I don't think she said, I think it was pet-friendly. Stuck a monkey in, went down there. Now he has a girlfriend. There's like a live camera feed on him at one point. We could check in on it. We also had somebody accidentally bring home a hermit crab in their seashell collection from South Carolina, and we had a volunteer moving to South Carolina, and she took the hermit crab back. We are dedicated to animals, is what I'm trying to say. And those are just some funny little anecdotes. But yes, we have had a monkey. On a case-by-case basis, we'll take things in just because we're more equipped than the average person to house something temporarily. But like, don't give us your monkeys. They were hard to deal with.
I can imagine. And if anybody has any other questions, we've got like 2 minutes left. Feel free to put a question in the comment section. And
his name was Tully, and he's at the Jungle Friends Primate Sanctuary. Ow! Did you say ow?
It's so great to hear those happy endings. Wait, was that him saying ow?
Yeah, it was him saying ow. That's one of the things he says. He does nibble at people's ears, so he heard ow a lot. He can also say in a Roxborough accent that mimics our other rehabber. So that's the fish crow. He's a fish crow, not an American crow, and they kind of go like instead of a caw. And he does us doing him. So he says it in a human. It's a Roxborough accent. It's amazing. Someday, if you guys can see me in person, you will be able to find it.
I would love to see him in person and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you said it, Russell. Well, thank you so much, Jackie. That was extremely informative. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, can they? You had mentioned your email.
Yeah, it's Jackie@phillywildlife.org. I'm happy to answer your questions, your kids' questions, any of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, and thank you. Sarah says, any plans for in-person programs coming up?
We are able to offer safe, socially distanced programming. We don't do anything on our site because we're prevented by the township, but we can come to you. So if you can provide an outdoor or socially distanced indoor setting that's safe, we are doing programming. So for the summertime, you can just, again, email me.
Good to know. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, and thank you so much, Russell.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And I hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and we'll see you sometime soon.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.